Welcome, Panther Nation football fans, to another edition of Growlin' and Prowlin'. I am, of course, Mr. CeeLo here, talking all things Carolina Panthers, from the draft to OTAs to the preseason to the regular season to the postseason to the Super Bowl to the offseason. Let the growling begin. Welcome back, you guys. It's been a couple of weeks, but I'm glad to be back here again. Of course, the offseason has been in swing for us for a couple of months now, and we have had to make some tough decisions. Of course, GM Dan Morgan, of course, has to, with limited resources and a lack of trade options, as well as draft options, I should say. But looking at what we've done over the last couple of days, it's been up and up. I just think we've made a couple of reaches, but we'll go down the list of players that we've added. And of course, I'll go over the guys that we lost and see what this looks like for us in the future. And guys, I will be doing a show in depth about the trio of players that we lost due to free agency. I'm just not feeling that right now, but I am going to do it. And as many of you know, we've lost the Spider-Man in Brian Burns to the New York Giants in a trade. We also lost Jeremy Chin, which many of you don't realize. This guy was a great player. I just did not like the way Coach Avera utilized him. And, of course, Frankie Louisville, a guy whom we're sorely going to miss next to Brian Burns. I would argue that we're going to miss him a lot more than we're going to lose. We're going to miss Brian Burns. Frankie Louisville was a guy I just knew we were going to re-sign, but we didn't. But we did lose Von Bell. We released him and saved some cap space, as well as Hayden Hurst. And we ended up trading Dante Jackson and acquired Deontay Johnson, and a player whom I'm not a big fan of because, he was up and down. I think he was much better. I guess you could say the quarterback play had a lot to do with it, but we can speculate on what he can do and hopefully see what Dave Canellis can do or what he saw in him to make this deal. But of course, we ended up dropping Dante Jackson's $15+ million deal this year, and we only took up $10 million with Deontay Johnson. So it turned out to be a pretty good deal on our end if Deontay Johnson becomes whatever Canellis thinks he can become. But let's go down the guys that we signed. We signed 2 guards and Robert Hunt for 5 years, $100 million. And he was a big cornerstone. I love his size. He's 27 years old. He's 6'6", 330. And as many of you guys know, Robert Hunt was huge on that offensive line for the Dolphins. And a big problem we had last year was Brady Christensen and Austin Corbett were injured. And, of course, we released Bradley Bozeman, which in layman terms, what we're hearing is that they're going to use Austin Corbett, move Corbett to that center position, which leaves Brady Christensen, who's done a pretty good job at guard before his injury in week 1. So plugging in Robert Hunt, who's the size of a blame tackle, would be, I guess they're living under the Canellis is saying that, hey, we're gonna protect Bryce Young, and Morgan is behind it. So in comes Damian Lewis, who signs a 4-year, $53 million deal, who was, I don't want to say instrumental in running the ball the way the Seahawks were able to run the football, because that's what they do. And I think ultimately that's what Canellis wants to be able to do. He did run the ball quite a bit in Tampa Bay. And the 6'2", 327-pound guard, 26 years old, out of LSU, was pretty darn good, as I said before, in Seattle, because Seattle loves to run the football, and they're pretty good in pass rushing. Protecting the passer and Geno Smith. So ultimately, I'm a firm believer that we nailed it, but I think we kind of overpaid just a tad. But I guess getting what you want is all that matters. Now, let's say Josie Jewell, a tackling machine, they got for $22 million, almost $23 million out of Denver. I was impressed with the way he played, and I think he had some ties with Coach Averos. So I would say this: a guy that has over 100 tackles on that Broncos defense is overly impressive. So we were able to get this guy, and hopefully, what it looks like, they're probably going to try to move Shaq Thompson either. This is what it looks like, moving him outside back where he played for several years during the Luke Kuechly era. And then there's Troy Hill, a guy that I really like. I was happy to hear this guy get re-signed, so definitely happy about them bringing this guy back, because he was such a huge part of what we did last year. And probably another big deal that we made was with the Giants, where Brian Burns we signed a 6'3", 320-pound Ashawn Robinson, a guy who had 62 tackles. Now, coming off of Brian Burns' 100, that could be huge, you guys. This was actually a really good signing, in my opinion. He's 28 years old, and he's out of Alabama, of course. I'm noticing Morgan's getting a lot of guys out of Alabama, so hopefully this is going to make up for the loss of the Spider-Man and Frankie Louvu, and even Edo Gross-Matos, you guys, and as well as Jeremy Chin. I always thought we could have brought Jeremy Chin back, being that he was on that type of season and he wasn't going to be able to ask much. I was hoping maybe we could do the same thing we did with Frankie Louvu, a 1 year prove it type deal. But unfortunately, Morgan wanted to go away. But unfortunately, that's not what direction they wanted to go to. Then there's J.J. Jensen, the long snapper we brought back. And then there's Dane Jackson, cornerback. For 2 years, $14.5 million. A guy that played out of Buffalo, 5'11", 180. Ultimately, this is a guy who didn't get a whole lot of playing time, but he ended up with 37 tackles. Not really sure if that's a good pickup or not, because he's not really showing a lot. Now, a lot of people like this guy. I'm not big on him because I'm not familiar with him. And outside of what we've done, I'm really upset at the fact that we got better offensively. One weapon we've added, and we have not done anything majorly defensively. It's like you're saying, okay, a guy like Amari Barno, whom I've been begging to get his opportunity. Now it's like they're saying, okay, we're going to give him the opportunity. And Eku Liata, who's got a huge upside. He's got a frame a lot like Amari Barno's, and these guys are massive, and it's hard to see without having that big rush on the end. Maybe Coach Avero is going to create such a big push up front that you've got to double team Derek Brown and double team Ashawn Robinson. Hopefully that's what happens. These guys generate such pressure that you can get one-on-ones with Barno, that they can win, Liatu, that you can win, and possibly in the draft. We got two second-round picks now, courtesy of the Brian Burns trade, which I'll discuss on another show as we say goodbye to give our just dues to Frankie Louvu, Brian Burns, and Jeremy Chin. Because regardless of what kind of season he had last year, he had 3 very awesome, productive years as a Carolina Panther, and there's nothing but love and respect that I have for these guys, and you guys in Panther Nation should too. We wish them all the best, but we will give them their their flowers as they left Panther Nation on for greener pastures. But we will run down the details as Jeremy Chan signed a 1-year deal worth $4 million, which I don't understand why we couldn't do that. Ito Gross-Matos signed a 2-year, $18 million deal with the Niners. Frankie Louvu signed a 3-year deal with the Commanders. So Jeremy Chan is also a Commander. So you're seeing the Commanders picking spots and Dan Quinn doing his thing early. You're seeing him say, hey, look, we're going to take some of those guys from that defense and we're going to bring them over here. But the details of Brian Burns is 5 years at $150 million. You're basically, $30 million a year, something he wanted. And the Giants gave it to him via trade. So I am looking and hoping that the Panthers look at Mike Williams in free agency or possibly trading. Well, not necessarily trading, but maybe looking at. I'm hearing that they're looking at wide receivers in the draft. And Xavier Leggett seems to be one of those guys that the Carolina Panthers are targeting. He is a hometown boy. But I'm looking at him. He's 6'1", 221. I love the size. But, well, let me rephrase. I love the weight and the size. But if he was maybe 6'3", that would be great. But unfortunately, he's not. And duly noted, I really believe we're going to have to get some guys. We're going to have to get a big guy. We need at least one big guy. And I remember listening to somebody on another podcast, and they said the exact same thing that I said. And the reality of it is there has to be a big guy out there. You need a red zone threat, whether it's a tight end or, just a guy that can eat up space. And that's ultimately what you have to have is a big wide receiver. We've got a lot of little guys. And, you already know Brock Bowers is not going to be there. And honestly, I don't think tight end is the problem. I really don't. And I get really frustrated when I hear people talk about tight end. Now, Brian Thomas I love because this guy can run. And he's big. He's 6'4", 205. We don't need a Ladd McConkey. We've already got that, Deontay Johnson. Now we need somebody with some size. Zach Frazier's a guy that we could possibly look at. Then we have a Donnie Mitchell. A guy whose numbers are going to go up the board as well because he's fast and he's a great guy that can go up and get jump balls. That's who I would really want, guys, is a Donnie Mitchell. And it's going to be tough because I imagine this guy is going to go up the boards with his size and his speed combination. He reminds me so much of T. Higgins. And ultimately, as I said before, it's just going to be exceptionally tough to get a guy of this caliber with his speed, his 40 time, just running up the blame board. It's just going to be so tough to get a guy like that. But as I said, Keon Coleman's another one to keep your eye on because his 40 time is going to hurt him. But he did have a 20 mile per hour straightaway speed when he got the top speed, so that's a good thing. 6'4", 215. That's pretty impressive for a guy of his size running that fast. But we have to keep in mind we need to get a guy that has got that speed. Now, Xavier Leggett is a guy that many people are touting as the guy that we're looking at. So I'm not going to say that people are wrong, but, the thing is I don't want a guy that 6'1". I want a guy that's going to, turn in, we need a big guy. We need a T. Higgins type guy. And without actually having T. Higgins. But, guys, let me know what you think so far about our free agency so far. As I said, I'm going to get to the departures show and give our guys that gave their hearts for Panther Nation with Jeremy Chan 4 years, Frankie Louvu, and Brian Burns 5 years, and give them their props. But make sure you guys check out the show, Growlin' and Prowlin' on Facebook, and also go to my Instagram, Mr. CeeLo, and check out what other things I'm involved in. And also comment on the show, like and subscribe, guys. Let me know your comments in there. And I will do my best to keep up with all of this as we are in a rebuilding phase with GM Dan Morgan and Coach Dave Canellis. But until the next time, you guys, keep prowling the airwaves and keep growling out. Keep pounding.